G'day and welcome. My name is Matt Creedon and this is Music is Medicine. Today I want to talk to you about something a little different. I want to talk about music theory, the ear, patterns, and how I eventually came to create this thing called the easy key. Now, before anyone thinks that this is just a sales pitch for some musical gadget, honestly, it's really not. The easy key actually came out of years of confusion, frustration, obsession, and eventually a kind of breakthrough and understanding how music actually works. And truthfully, my journey with this all started when I was a kid. I desperately wanted to be a musician. The problem was, I didn't really have a teacher, or maybe more accurately, I didn't have a teacher that I felt truly understood me, or was particularly interested in helping me understand music deeply. My first music teacher was honestly a pretty terrifying woman. Now, look, in fairness, she was probably deeply traumatized herself. But patience was not exactly her strong point. There were stories floating around that she would break things over students' knuckles. I probably shouldn't laugh. And she had a pretty serious temper. And I'll just say this, I was absolutely terrified of her. In fact, I remember thinking very clearly, I'm never becoming a music teacher. Funny how life pans out. Now, this was all before the internet. There was no YouTube, there were no online courses, no TikTok piano gurus telling you they could teach you jazz in 30 seconds. So if you wanted to learn music, you had books and determination. And luckily, I had determination. I wanted to be a musician badly enough that I was willing to put in ridiculous hours trying to understand how music worked. So I started reading everything I could get my hands on. And what I kept running into was the alphabetical system. You know, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B over and over again. So I became obsessed with memorizing it. Every morning I'd wake up and I would recite key signatures. Then I would do it again in the shower, and then again on the bus to school, and then again before bed. And after a couple of months of doing this obsessively, it started to click. The alphabetical system began to feel natural. I got pretty good at sight reading, I got good at improvising, I got good at learning songs. But there was one massive problem. My ear was terrible, and this completely confused me because my mum, who didn't know any theory at all, could work out tunes effortlessly by ear. Meanwhile, I understood theory easily. I could read music, but if you played me something and said work it out, I struggled badly. I even spent a couple of years trying to develop perfect pitch. Every day my mum would play notes for me and I would sit there and try to memorize them. And after about, a couple of years of this, I got about 4 notes under my belt and then I finally gave up. It just felt impossible. Then in my early 20s, something happened that changed everything. I enrolled in a music course at Box Hill TAFE, and honestly, it was a fantastic course. The teachers were serious. They wanted their students to become world-class musicians. And this is where I first encountered something called American jazz theory. Now, this was the turning point because suddenly music wasn't just letters anymore. It became numbers, intervals, relationships, patterns. Instead of saying C to D, we'd think 1 to 2. Instead of C to E, we would think 1 to 3. And in jazz, we simplified the intervals into a number system. That is 1, flat 2, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 6, flat 7 and 7. I know that probably just sounds like gobbledygook to most people, but to a musician, that's gold. Now, when I started this course, I wasn't a jazz guitarist. I actually came from a classical guitar background. So most of my thinking was still based around the alphabetical system. But once I connected this number system to ear training, something enormous clicked in my mind. I realized the alphabetical system is basically algebra. it's naming, it's labels, it's symbols, but the number system, that's the actual relationship between the sounds. And this completely changed the way I understood music. You could almost think of the letters like colours. C is red, D is orange, E is yellow. They're just names we give things. But the numbers describe the distance between sounds. And each of those intervals has a flavour, a feeling, a personality. Some intervals feel calm, some feel tense, some feel very tense, some feel warm, some feel cold, some feel happy, and some feel sad. And suddenly I realized this is what my ear actually recognizes, not letters, it's relationships. And it dawned on me, if you don't understand these fundamental relationships, how are you ever supposed to truly understand music? It would be like teaching mathematics by starting with algebra before simple numbers. It's backwards. And honestly, that's exactly how I felt I had learned music, backwards. I had learned the complicated symbolic system first before understanding the actual sound of intervals. And once this penny dropped, everything started opening up immediately. Now, over the years, I started teaching this number system to students, and occasionally some students, especially the younger ones, would say, "But Matt, shouldn't we be learning the proper alphabetical system?" And I understood where they were coming from, because it's probably what they were learning at a traditional school. But deep down, I knew this number system was easier, it's more intuitive, it's far more powerful for training the ear. Because when we learn through numbers, we associate the sound with the relationship. It's a little bit like flavour. If I handed you chocolate, you wouldn't say, bananas. That would be ridiculous. And you also wouldn't describe chocolate using its molecular structure. You would simply say, this tastes like chocolate. You'd recognise the flavour, and music is exactly the same. When we hear a musical interval, we should recognise the flavour of it. But most people are taught to memorise letters instead of recognising relationships. And so when people play C, D, E, they may not hear 1, 2, 3. And because of that, they don't actually associate the emotional flavour of intervals with sound. But if you understand 1 feels like home, 2 feels unresolved, 3 feels happy, flat 3 feels sad, then eventually your ear starts recognizing those flavors naturally, almost through osmosis. And this is really where the easy key eventually came from. Because over many years of teaching, I realized something. Most people struggle with music theory because they're trying to memorize information instead of recognizing patterns, especially on piano. Now, guitarists are very used to patterns. We think visually, shapes, movements, geometry, but piano students are often thrown straight into the alphabetical system, and for many people it becomes overwhelming. Then one day I had a mature age student who just could not grasp the number system I was trying to explain. And I remember thinking there has got to be an easier way for me to show this visually. Something immediate, something intuitive, something where the person could suddenly go, "Oh, now I get it." And that was the birth of the easy key. It came almost intuitively, like many inventions probably do, out of necessity or out of frustration, out of wanting to simplify something that felt unnecessarily difficult. Now, my student and I spent years trying to make it into a commercial success. I blogged about it, worked on it constantly, tried to get it off the ground, but honestly, it never really took off. And eventually, life moved on. My student and I went in different directions, and the easy key just became a staple inside my teaching studio. But recently, something interesting has happened. I started posting more about it online, and suddenly people started responding strongly. And I think maybe the timing is finally right, because people are searching for patterns. They want music to make sense. They want to train their ear. They want to improvise. They actually just want to understand what they're hearing. And more than anything, I think people want a direct connection between imagination and sound. They want to hear something in their mind and play it effortlessly. To play with friends, to improvise, to write maybe a little song or a melody, to understand music like a language rather than a puzzle. And honestly, music is a language. But unlike spoken language, many people are taught music almost entirely through memorisation. It would be like learning poetry in another language without understanding what any of the words mean. You could recite it, but you wouldn't truly understand it. And I think this is one of the reasons so many people eventually give up on music. It just feels too hard, too abstract, too intellectual, too disconnected from feeling. But music itself is actually very simple. It's only 12 sounds. That's it. It's 12 characters. And through understanding relationships, through numbers, through intervals, through ear training, those sounds become a language your nervous system begins to recognize naturally. Now, just to be clear, I'm not against the alphabetical system. You absolutely still need reference points. C is still C, D is still D. You need to know where things are on your instrument, but once you know that starting point, the number system becomes an incredibly powerful way to understand what music is actually doing. And so moving forward, for those who are interested, I'll be creating more podcasts and courses exploring these ideas, not just music theory, but ear training, pattern recognition, improvisation, sound, emotion, and the deeper mysteries of music itself. Because music isn't just information, it's feeling, it's relationship, it's emotion, it's patterns, and most importantly, it's connection. Thank you so much for listening. I genuinely appreciate you being here, and I look forward to continuing this musical journey together. Until next time, remember, music is medicine.